Don't worry, by the time we are done with you, you will become just like us. Maybe then our husbands will look at us again.
Please, don't shave my hair. I beg you, I've done nothing wrong. Nala screamed as dozens of hands dragged her to the center of the village square. Don't worry, dear, one of the women hissed, gripping a sharp blade. By the time we're done with you, you'll be just like us, completely bald. Then maybe our husbands will look at us again. But this story didn't start here. It started 3 weeks earlier, in a place called Zim. In this village, women were famous for one thing: their hair. It wasn't just beautiful, it was legendary. Thick, dark, and so long it swept the ground behind them like royal cloaks. People traveled for weeks just to see it with their own eyes. Merchants would stop in the market just to watch the women walk by, their hair flowing like black rivers in the sunlight. Young girls grew up knowing their hair was special. Mothers taught their daughters how to care for it with oils and prayers passed down through generations. Men from distant villages paid high bride prices just to marry a Zim woman. Husbands spent hours every evening braiding and touching their wives' magnificent hair. It was more than beauty. It was identity. It was pride. It was everything they had ever known. Then, one morning, without warning, everything changed. Women across Zim woke up and screamed. Their hair was gone. Completely gone. Every single strand had vanished overnight. Bald heads, smooth as polished stone, stared back at them from mirrors. The screaming started at dawn and didn't stop for hours. Women stumbled into the streets, touching their bare scalps in shock and horror. Mothers cried, daughters wept, grandmothers sat in silence, unable to believe what had happened. Every woman in Zim was now bald. Every woman except one. Her name was Nala. She was a quiet orphan girl who lived with her guardian Mira and Mira's daughter Kura. That same terrible morning, Nala woke up and touched her head carefully. Her hair was still there, but something even stranger was happening. Her hair wasn't just staying, it was growing. Growing thicker, growing darker, growing more beautiful than it had ever been before. By midday, it reached past her waist. By evening, it touched the ground. Nala stood in front of her small mirror, confused and frightened. Why was she the only one? What did this mean? The village herbalist was called immediately. Doctors came from nearby towns. Prayers were offered at the shrine. But no one could explain it. There was no sickness, no cause anyone could identify, no medicine that worked. Women stayed inside their homes, too ashamed to be seen. Those who had to go out wrapped cloth around their heads, but everyone knew what the cloth was hiding. The village that was once full of laughter and pride now felt like a place of mourning. Herbalists tried every remedy they knew. Nothing worked. The village priestess performed ritual after ritual. Still, nothing changed. Doctors examined the women carefully, but found no illness, no explanation. It was as if their hair had simply been erased from existence. But the worst part wasn't the baldness itself. It was what came after. By the end of the first week, the men of Zim began to change. Husbands who once couldn't keep their hands in their wives' hair now barely looked at them. They turned away in bed. They made excuses to leave the house early. They stopped saying loving words. The love seemed to be disappearing along with the hair. One evening, a young man named Keno stood in the village square and announced loudly that he was cancelling his engagement to Kura. "I can't marry a man," he said coldly, his voice carrying across the shocked crowd. "I need a woman with hair." Kura stood there frozen, tears running down her smooth head, unable to speak. Her mother Mira watched in horror as her daughter's future crumbled in front of everyone. Within 3 days, 2 more engagements were broken. The same words were used each time. "You look like my brother now. What's the point? I can't feel the same way anymore." Women began to understand a terrible truth. Their husbands had loved them for their hair, not for who they were. And now that the hair was gone, the love seemed to be disappearing too. Homes that were once warm became cold and silent. Wives tried everything to win back their husband's attention, but nothing worked. And then the men started talking about someone else, Nala. At first, it was just whispers. Then it became impossible to ignore. At the market, men would stop talking when Nala walked by just to watch her hair flow behind her. At the well, they found excuses to be nearby when she came to fetch water. In their own homes, husbands began making comments. "Did you see Nala today? Her hair is so long now it touches the ground. The way it shines in the sunlight, I've never seen anything like it. She's the only real woman left in this village." The women heard everything. Every word cut like a knife. Mira's husband, a man named Thomas, came home late one evening. He barely greeted his wife. Mira had prepared his favorite meal, but he hardly touched it. He sat by the window, staring out into the darkness, thinking of Nala. Across Zim, the same scene was playing out in home after home. Wives watched their husbands drift away. They saw the longing in their eyes when Nala passed by. They had their own names spoken less and less, while Nala's name was whispered more and more. The jealousy started as a small seed, but it grew quickly. It grew in the silence between husband and wife. It grew in the cold, empty spaces in their beds. It grew in the broken promises and cancelled weddings. And soon, that jealousy turned into something darker, something dangerous. The women of Zim began to ask a question that would change everything. Why is she the only one? Why did every woman lose her hair except Nala? The question spread like wildfire, and with it came suspicion, anger, and finally, accusation. One evening, a group of women gathered in secret at the edge of the village. There were more than 40 of them, all bald, all bitter, all desperate. They met under the old tree where no one could hear them. Mira stood at the center. Her face was hard. Her eyes were filled with pain and rage. "My husband doesn't look at me anymore," she said, her voice shaking. "He turns his back to me in bed. He called me my brother." Other women began to speak, their voices breaking with emotion. "My fiancé left me. He said I'm not a woman anymore. My husband spends all day finding excuses to walk past Nala's house. I heard him whispering her name in his sleep. My children asked me why I look like their father now." The pain in that circle was thick enough to touch. These women had lost more than their hair. They had lost their identity, their confidence, their marriages, their futures. And in the middle of all their suffering, one girl walked around with hair more beautiful than ever before. "Why her?" someone shouted. "Why is Nala the only one who didn't lose her hair?" "It's not natural," another woman said. "Every single woman went bald except her. That can't be a coincidence." "She did something," a voice called out from the darkness. "She must have cursed us. How else do you explain it?" The accusations grew louder and more confident. Logic didn't matter anymore. Facts didn't matter. The women needed someone to blame, someone to punish, and Nala was the only target that made sense. Mira raised her hand for silence. When she spoke, her voice was cold and determined. If we can't have hair, then neither should she. Once Nala is bald like the rest of us, our husbands will have no choice. They'll have to come back to us. They'll have to love us again. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. We shave her, Mira continued. We shave her clean, then this nightmare ends. No one disagreed. No one questioned if it was right. They were too desperate, too hurt, too blind with jealousy. 3 days later, just after dawn, they came for Nala. She was outside grinding pepper for the morning meal when she heard footsteps. Many footsteps. Before she could turn around, hands grabbed her from every direction. "Let me go! What are you doing?" Nala screamed, trying to pull away. But there were too many of them, more than 20 women, all pulling, all pushing, dragging her through the dirt toward the village square. "Stop! Please! I haven't done anything wrong!" Nala cried, her voice filled with terror. They didn't listen. They didn't even look at her face. By the time they reached the square, the entire village had gathered. Men stood in clusters, watching with uncomfortable expressions. Children clung to their fathers' legs. Elders sat on their benches in silence. The moment of judgment had arrived. Mira stood in the center, holding a sharp blade that caught the morning light. Her face was like stone. "You cursed us!" Mira shouted, her voice echoing across the square. "You stole our hair! Admit it!" "I didn't do anything," Nala sobbed, struggling against the hands holding her down. "I don't know why this happened. I'm just as confused as all of you. Please, you have to believe me." "Liar!" someone screamed from the crowd. "Witch!" another voice called. Kura stood beside her mother, silent, her face twisted with bitterness. Thomas stood at the edge of the crowd. He saw the fear in Nala's eyes. He saw the blade in his wife's hand, but he said nothing. He just stood there and watched. "Please," Nala begged, tears streaming down her face. "Please don't do this. I'm innocent." But the blade was already moving toward her head. Nala screamed, a scream so loud and filled with pain that it seemed to shake the very earth. The cutting took a long time. With each stroke of the blade, Nala felt like a part of her soul was being torn away. Her magnificent hair fell in heavy clumps around her. Women watched with grim satisfaction. Men watched in uncomfortable silence. No one tried to stop it. When it was finally over, Nala collapsed onto her own severed hair. She was completely bald now, just like all of them. She sobbed so hard, her whole body shook, but no sound came out anymore. Mira stood over her, breathing heavily, the blade still in her hand. "Now you're one of us," Mira said coldly. "Now you know how it feels." The crowd began to disperse slowly. Women walked away with their heads held a little higher, feeling like justice had been served. Men walked away quietly, troubled by what they had witnessed, but unwilling to say anything. Nala was left there in the square, sitting in a circle of her own hair. She didn't move for a long time. When she finally stood up, her leg shook so badly she could barely walk. For 3 days, she stayed in the small room at the back of Mira's house. She didn't eat, she didn't speak. She just lay in the darkness, touching her bare head over and over. On the 4th morning, something impossible happened. Nala woke up with a strange tingling sensation on her head. At first, she thought she was imagining it, but when she touched her scalp carefully, she felt something. Something rough, something growing. She rushed to the small, cracked mirror on the wall. Tiny black hairs were sprouting all across her head, like grass growing after rain. She touched them carefully, afraid they might disappear, but they were real. By afternoon, the hair had grown to her ears. By evening, it reached her shoulders. By the next morning, it was past her waist. Within 2 weeks, Nala's hair returned completely, and it was growing even longer, even thicker, even more beautiful than before. Now it pooled on the ground around her feet when she stood still. The village noticed immediately. Whispers turned into shouts. Confusion turned into fear. How is her hair growing back? We shaved her. How is this possible? This proves she's a witch. Some women wanted to shave Nala again. Others were terrified of what it all meant. Arguments broke out. Panic spread. No one could understand what was happening. Something was very, very wrong. Then, on the 18th morning after Nala's shaving, a figure appeared at the edge of Zim. An old woman, bent with age, but walking with purpose. She leaned on a carved wooden stick, and her hair, completely gray and white, flowed behind her all the way to the ground, longer than any hair anyone had ever seen. The entire village recognized her immediately. Mama Zamora, the oldest woman in the land, the keeper of their history, the guardian of their most sacred traditions. She hadn't been seen in Zim for many years. Her arrival could only mean one thing. The truth was about to be revealed. Mama Zamora's voice, though old, carried across the village like thunder. Gather everyone, now. It is time you learned the truth you have forgotten. Within minutes, the entire village assembled in the square. Men, women, children, elders, everyone came. They stood in silence, waiting, afraid of what they were about to hear. Mama Zamora stood at the center. Her ancient eyes moved slowly across the sea of bald heads. When she spoke, disappointment filled every word. You think your hair was just beauty, just something to be proud of. No, your hair was a blessing, a sacred gift. She paused, letting her words sink in. Many generations ago, your ancestors saved the life of a dying, powerful, magical spirit woman. The spirit was grateful and blessed all women born in this land with the most beautiful hair in the world. But the blessing came with one rule, one sacred law that could never be broken. The crowd leaned forward, desperate to hear. The blessing would remain as long as you used your beauty with kindness, with compassion, with love. But the moment you began to use your beauty to hurt others, the blessing would be reversed. Gasps erupted across the square. Days ago, a woman named Kumi fell very sick. The sickness took all her hair. When she recovered, she was completely bald. And instead of helping her, instead of showing her love and support, you women mocked her. Shame began to spread across faces like a disease. You laughed when she walked by. You whispered cruel things. You made her feel like she was no longer a woman, like she was worthless. And the worst part was that you poisoned her husband's mind against her. Mama Zamora's voice cracked with emotion. Her husband began to turn away from her. He stopped touching her. He said she looked like his brother. Kumi came to me, broken and crying. She said even her own husband couldn't look at her anymore. She felt like she wanted to die. Mira's face had gone completely pale. Other women began to weep quietly. Only one person showed Kumi kindness, Mama Zamora said, her eyes finding Nala in the crowd. This orphan girl, Nala, gave Kumi food. She sat with her when everyone else walked away. She told Kumi she was still beautiful, still worthy. Nala's eyes filled with tears. She remembered that sick woman now. But one person's kindness wasn't enough, Mama Zamora continued. The pain from all of you was too great. Kumi ran away from Zim. In her deepest pain, she went to the sacred river, crying, wanting to end her life. Her tears touched the water, and the ancient river spirit heard her suffering. The spirit saw how you had abused the blessing, how you used your beauty not to help others, but to hurt them. So the spirit reversed the blessing for everyone except Nala, whose heart remained pure and kind. The truth hit them like a physical blow. Women fell to their knees, understanding flooding through them. They had done this to themselves. Mira collapsed, her hands covering her face. All the anger, all the blame, all the cruelty had been for nothing. What can we do? Someone cried out desperately. How do we fix this? Mama Zamora's expression softened. You must find Kumi. Bring her back to this village. Show her real love, real remorse. When she truly forgives you, when her wounded heart heals, only then will the blessing return. The search began that very day. A group of women, led by Mira and joined by Nala, traveled for many days. Finally, after almost 2 weeks, they found Kumi living alone in a small hut far from Zim. Her head was still bald, her eyes still carried deep pain. When Kumi saw them coming, she tried to run. Stay away from me! But Mira fell to her knees right there in the dirt. Kumi, please. We were wrong. We were so terribly wrong. We were cruel to you. We made you feel worthless. We turned your husband against you. And we are so, so sorry. One by one, every woman fell to her knees. Nala stepped forward and took Amara's hands gently. I never forgot you, Nala said softly. Please come back with us. Let us show you the love we should have shown from the beginning. Something in Kumi's face softened. After a long silence, she whispered, I forgive you all. The journey back took days. The women cared for Kumi with true tenderness. When they arrived in Zim, a great celebration was prepared in her honor. 3 days later, as the sun rose, a miracle happened. Women across Zim woke to find tiny hairs growing on their heads. The blessing was returning. Zim had learnt its lesson. Beauty without kindness means nothing. True worth comes from the heart.